Hello. Welcome to Expansions. This is Promise Resource Network. I'm Jane, and we are here in Charlotte, North Carolina, coming at you live. So as you tune in, please say hey. If you want to share where you're from, that would be cool. If you catch it on the replay, that would be super fly. You could be like, hey, from here, there, wherever that you are. So I want to thank you all for being here in the real life. I'm like super happy. I was gone for a couple of weeks and I feel like so good and expanded. And I feel like I might hit my head on this.
Turn it. Yeah.
Well, there we go. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. This is what we do.
Yes.
So thank you so much. So I had gone out west and went out to New Mexico. That was like the destination, and we were out there for a while. Hey, Linda. We were out there for a while, and it was such medicine. One, because I was with a dear sister friend. We stayed with like other sisters around, stayed in Airbnbs that were like goddess owned and operated. So it was like this huge, like feminine, spacious experience. So I got to anchor into myself, anchor into fluidity, and really expand my entire frequency and consciousness. And that I want to kind of bring some of that into this conversation today because it just feels really good. And I'm also noticing that I am not taking myself into social situations. I'm not going into big groups right now. I feel like a sensitive baby, and I'm like, I don't want to go into the grocery store. I don't want to go to Target. Like I don't want to. Like it feels like ugh, to me. So I'm curious if anyone else is feeling that, or if it's literally just me because of my experience. Like, are y'all feeling that, or is that just
pretty
me?
much always feel that way?
Really?
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
But then I think lately I've been actually doing the opposite, which is not really being bothered by it.
Oh, so you've been able to go in and like kind of hold your frequency.
Yeah, like just kind of zoom and do my thing and get out. But it hasn't really bothered me.
Nice. Okay.
I have never not gone somewhere until this past week. And all of a sudden, I am collecting people's energies like crazy. So I don't want to be around anybody else. So new to me, also staying at home quite a bit. So I feel you.
Okay. I'm talking with a lot of people who are having experiences with their empathic field that they're picking up more. So they're picking up more on the earth plane. They're picking up more in the cosmic realm, in the ancestral realm, in the grocery store realm. You know, like, oh, I went to the family reunion and I could tell you who was doing what. I don't, you know, like our energy field is expanding on the collective level and the sovereign level. And there's so much that changes when that happens. So first of all, I want to do this first. Okay. Can we just like connect for a minute so we're all on the same page? Like, oh yes, Linda, other people are out here. Here that you would be able to join us. I know you live far away, but still, and I know you all get like the profile of me this whole time. Trust, I will continue to check in. And until then, take a deep breath. And let it go. Start to connect with you. Affirm the spirit that you are in this body, in this now moment. Affirm all of the guiding spirits, the ancestors, those who have walked and continue to walk and will walk on this land, supporting you and guiding you. And affirm Great Spirit, the oneness, the creator, the source, the God, the goddess, whatever the word is that resonates for all that is. Recognizing that you are in fact a fractal of this. taking another breath in, feeling your body, and surrender this breath out. Mm. Dio, are you okay if I light a little sage? Just a little. Just a little bit of sage.
A little smudgy smudge.
Right? Smells so good to me. So, something that I was thinking about as I was feeling into this expansion, right, was the ego. And it's kind of what I want to bring up is this ego and something that I've been reading in this Tantra Illuminated book. So check this out. So real quick, what do you all think of the ego? What do y'all think of the ego? Like, do you love the ego? Do you hate the ego? Do you want to kill it? Like, is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? Like, just a couple words. What do you feel around the ego? Your ego and or someone else's?
Mine feels limiting currently.
Ooh,
Like it is limiting me from expansion. That's my current experience.
beautiful awareness. Thank you for sharing that.
So I am learning how to ignore because the voice that it has does not need to have any power.
So we have recognizing the ego is there and is limiting, and then ignoring the ego because the voice is not serving.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that.
I'm learning to befriend it.
Ooh, how does befriending your ego? How is that? How do you do that? How do
I
you do
guess
that?
trying to nurture it in a sense of like when something comes up, check in with myself and find a better solution to it instead of entertaining it, but also pushing it down. So I'm learning to float through it, but also try to find a better, higher aspect.
Nice. So not totally ignoring it, but working with it. Right on. I love that. Let me know what you all think and feel around your ego. I want to share something. So I'm reading this book, and I like the way I read books. I always start at the back, and I always have. I don't know why that is. And I'm like, and then eventually I get to like the middle. And I'm like, I guess I should start at the beginning. And then I read it from the beginning to the end. And I'm like, I don't want to say I wasted time, but like really, I just double read the end. Anyway. It's the Tantra Illuminated book by Chris Wallace. I highly encourage it. It's a beautifully written book by Christopher D. Wallace. He's very thorough in all that he explains. And he references the Yoga Sutras and Patanjali quite a bit, which I like that. So he talks about the ego. And I thought this was really cool. Check this out. I didn't fart. If I did, I would have lit the sage again. It's just
No
clearing. It says the ego is a persistent contraction of awareness in the form of a collection of self-images that causes suffering through artificial self-limitation. So the ego is a persistent contraction, right, preventing expansion of awareness in the form of a collection of self-images. So the I ams, my self-images. I am this and I am that and I've done this so that I. That causes suffering because it's artificial self-limitations that then become imposed, right? When I read that, it was like I saw something so much clearer for myself. I was like, because I had I didn't even realize that I had an ego for a long time, because it was the controller of me for so long. I was running out of this fear, this like, well, I'm not safe, so I'm gonna hurt you all first. So, and then when I recognized that and was learning about the ego in myself, I kind of tried to kill it. Like I really tried to like ignore it to death and kill it to death. And I realized that I was hurting myself because that was the human experience that I had, was emotional neglect and abuse. And so I was doing that to this aspect of myself that was actually created as a self-preservation during the times of emotional neglect and abuse. So I was just reinforcing what created my ego. I was actually feeding it unknowingly, right? And so then I was like, son of a b, like, like rewind, reprogram. What do I do now? And it wasn't until I actually actively started loving it, like really befriending it. So I would hear it because it was always this really loud voice that would say like, well, you big dumb dummy, what the hell's wrong with you? You know, like literally those would be the words that my ego would reflect back to me. And so when I personally chose to be with those words and to say, well, okay, so I'm not a big dumb dummy and there's nothing wrong with me. And let's see, where did this voice come from, right? So it was like I became this witness. My higher self became this witness, and the part of me that spoke and loved my ego. And every time I did that, that egoic aspect that was contracting me from all of these beliefs and ideas started to just like unzip and unwind and start to relax. And in that, it itself expanded through a method of almost dissolution. It just started to dissolve. And so then the bigger part of me, that witness, the I am, started to really kind of take hold. And so over the years, it's like this ego aspect of me keeps getting softer, more quiet, less constricting and contracting, less annoying, less of a pain in my own ass, and strengthening my relationships in all forms, from friendships to lovers to partners to parent. One parent. If the other parent watches, they don't. I'm aware. And going back to like this part of the ego, it's like, you know, we can't kill it. Like he mentions in here, many spiritual traditions view the ego as an enemy on the spiritual path because its voice seems opposite to the divine voice, the voice of our innermost self. However, in the Tantric tradition, the enemy is simply an ally viewed in the wrong way. Thus, the ego is not to be annihilated in Tantric yoga, but rather purified and infinitely expanded until it simply melts into all that is. And when I read that, I was like, I'm going to talk about this. So I would like to know your all's thoughts and feels around this.
Well, it makes sense because the ego is showing us the unhealed parts of ourselves. So when we do show compassion and love the ego, we are enhancing the wholeness. We're bringing that other piece of the ego in so that it can be whole.
Part of the whole? Or whole in and of itself?
Whole as like the spiritual union of self and higher self. The ego being the lower self. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting the way I see how, like, one of my ways of being is that I see how everything connects, from the quantum to the physical to the spiritual, just all these like beep, 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 beep. And when I look at the chakra system, I see how it correlates to very specific parts of our brain. as well as seeing how parts of our brain relate to the ego and the higher self. The ego to me is the brainstem, right? It's the reptilian brain, the part of our brain that is running on fight, flight, freeze, fawn, fear, whatever the other F is, all the Fs. That's that brainstem space. And then the higher mind, the frontal cortex space, just that whole like higher mind with direction and purpose, especially when both hemispheres of the brain are working together with the masculine and the feminine components, where there's logic and intuition and creativity and structure. That is like the upper chakras, but it's also that higher self. And I read something somewhere in my life that talked about the way I interpreted it was to be able to take the front of the mind to look back at the brainstem and then direct you from that point, as opposed to having the brainstem tell the front mind, do this, ha 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 ha. Turn left because you're only used to that and you don't know what to do otherwise, dummy. But let the front of the brain go, no, I know that it's right to turn right today. And I'm going to move through that fear. And then we're starting to create a whole new polarization of our energetic flow in our brain.
That kind of helps me to, it brought up observation, because technically if I look back, now I'm observing my mind.
Yes. Yes.
And I also like that it's physical, so it's not just a mental game. You're also making it where in the body does this relate?
Yes, exactly. And if you look at the chakra system, I see the brainstem as being the first, second, and third chakras. So it's our rooting, it's our first traumas, it's our feeling of safety and security and guilt and shame and pleasure and creativity and our expression of who we are. Whether it's our personality or our emotions, like what we show up and be in our space of action. So that's all brainstem. But we've been conditioned to live a separate life. We've been conditioned and trained to fear the ego of someone else, take whatever they give us, and become the ego aspect that we create to protect. We're not taught to become whole, and to integrate these parts of ourselves, because I don't know about y'all, but like contraction sucks.
And it's not comfortable.
No, it's really not. Like contraction is not good. Check this. So Esteban Diaz says, "Se vale tajeta?" I don't know what that means. En de eso se trata de crecer. I don't speak Spanish. I don't comprehend it. I wish if anyone can translate that for me, that would be really fantastic. AJ is here and says, understanding who you are, what you are not, and allowing yourself to grow. Yes, understanding. That right there, that understanding. We've been taught so much how to like, outer stand, actually, just the outer standing. What are you going to say?
No.
I thought you were going to say something. And Erin is saying, hey. So yeah, I love that. Thank you, AJ, for that reflection. Understanding who you are and who you're not. I think that right there is to be able to recognize like this ego, right? The who we're not, the part of me that used to misuse substances on a really regular basis, that I am not an alcoholic. I am not a drug abuser. Aspects of me had behaviors of that, but it is not who I am. The I am is I am. And when the I am is who I allow myself to be, then the ego's voice is a lot quieter because the I am is the bigger part. I think that how we identify with that bigger part, when the ego then does show up, or these parts of us that are still ready to be healed or wanting to be healed or whatever, when they come up, they're like, I see them as like little Muppets that come up, like little Fraggle Rock, little creatures that are like, hey, I'm this character of you. And it's like, You know, we can like hit it. I know I'm tangenting, but this is just what I'm seeing in my head. And it's almost like we're hitting it, but we don't realize that it's like it's on our own hand.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, you know. Were you going to share something?
No,
like that?
I keep looking at your brain because it just looks so pretty.
Oh, this
Yeah,
one?
Yeah,
The orange is calling to me too.
Yeah, I got this big piece of amber, so I don't even remember where I got it. I've had it for a very long time, and I just started wearing rings again, which I'm very excited about. We're just gonna walk around like this from now on. Christopher Wallace goes on and says, the most important form of discernment on the spiritual path is discerning between what is to be held close and what is to be laid aside. And using that in reference to the ego. How do y'all feel about discernment?
I feel like it is a space I have a lot of practicing to do in. Pretty much this whole conversation, I feel sort of in the thick, maybe we all are, but like really in the thick of confronting these types of things where I have a bit of discernment and like, oh, okay, I don't need to listen to that voice. And then, oh, I have the ability to expand and be anything, but I actually have to do that. Does that make sense? Like, it's one thing to see the behavior and be like, okay, I don't have to do that. And then it's something else to put in a whole new practice of something new. It's terrifying, I would say. It can be.
You seem so chill about terrifying. You're like, it's just so terrifying.
That's interesting because it's such a personal responsibility. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like up to me. You can't do it for me. And it's a free choice. And it's like, I don't know, that's kind of where I'm at with this conversation. Like, damn, you really have to make the new behavior. Try to say something different than you might in this other circumstance. I don't know if I'm making sense. I was in a scenario a couple of days ago where I was like, it's time to do something different. But I just kind of had to sit there for a minute in the space of like, it's really up to me. I can go to habit, I can play small, I can do this old thing, or I can step up. So I was in that little window of time, right? Of like, I don't know, it's a really interesting place to be. Just because the option to step up is there and I can see it doesn't make it easy, right?
I think being in the awareness that you're in that time gap is no longer feeding that egoic smaller self.
Yeah.
Because that's the higher self that's actually taking the control. Is just because then at that point you're being the neutral witness.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a step in a direction. Like that's a huge step in any direction. Because if we're accustomed to having the ego be the one that's making the decisions and making these ways of being, as soon as we just don't, or we just pause, whether we do something different or better or not, but that pause is like, to me, monumental.
Yeah.
Like, for real. You know, it's kind of like when someone near the end of my drinking stint would ask me if I wanted a drink. My ego was like, yes. I didn't even think about it. I never asked me. Right? So then I did. I remember, you know, at whatever time that was when someone was like, do you want this drink? And I was like, do I want this drink? I don't know. I don't. But why? But I would feel better. Wait, would I feel better? Oh, I would be more liked. Oh God, it's because they would like me more if I do. Okay, so like just being in that conversation, whether I had the drink or not, doesn't matter. Because that conversation led to the next time that I was offered the drink that I did say no. That, you know, that's just this example. It could be anything, you know.
I think for me, it comes down to a couple of practices that I have implemented and then apparently dropped off because I'm ignoring the ego. But beside that, one comes from Byron Katie's book, Loving What Is. And it's just the title of the book, Loving What Is. And the actual practice that I will start to re-implement is simply saying thank you, teacher, to whatever does come up, because it's here for a reason and it's here for a season, and it's time to say thank you, teacher, and let it go.
That's huge. Like letting that voice that in this example, you big dumb dummy, to be able to talk back to it, right? That's taking the front, talking back to that trauma and saying, thank you, teacher. Thank you. So then like energetically speaking, we literally cut some like heavy, dense cords and wrapped it around a web of more gratitude. So that way, when the ego does start to expand and the contraction expands, it feels safe to do so. Just that like, oh, thank you, teacher. Because it's kind of like, sometimes like I can have gratitude for a teacher and also really kind of hate it. and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like it's totally okay to be like, it's kind of like when you hit traffic. And it's like, I know that there's a reason I'm hitting traffic. It's because I need to be wherever I'm going at a different time than I thought. And I needed this experience for whatever reason it is. Still don't like it. Still don't like it. Still would much rather just move the car. But I'm going to still have a bigger version of gratitude. I'm so glad you said that. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Discernment. Like to not let the ego be the decider of where discernment gets played out in your game of life. Because my ego was the chooser. My ego was like, he isn't cute enough, so nope. And like super shallow ego is great. Like really, ego, you're gonna be shallow now. Blah. Yes. But the ego voice was the one that was discerning for me. So how do you know what voice to listen to when practicing discernment?
That is a fantastic question.
Right?
So there was something that I read, and I haven't. There was something that I read recently that said there is always a battle against the ego, and when it's actually like intuition or whatever you want to call it, there is no conversation back and forth. It just is.
I feel like that would rely on being really like solidly in touch with your own intuition prior.
Yeah. Because
like
I agree. Because the discernment from my ego has helped me to stay safe. But obviously, like I would have to be very intuitive too in order to discern which is from my higher and ego self.
Because I know for me, if there had been a couple of times where I have had like a loud message to do something, and I've been like, well, I don't want to do that today. But then it comes again later, and I'm like, okay, you've come twice, like it's time to do something about it. Like this is really random and perchance. Like for me, it is that clear voice that gives me a directive. And there isn't any back and forth about it because it's once, and then my mind plays back and forth, but it's the mind playing. It's not the directive to do something.
That could be right, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there might be different ways to experience it too. Like I'm sure intuition hits us all different.
So what if to know the voice of discernment, which one is the truest, right? The one to follow, the highest self, that isn't coming from an irrational fear, but from a healthy fear. Like, it's just not safe to go there, so just don't. Like, you want to go the other way, And intuition comes from, to me, 3 different areas. You have your gut instinct, your third eye instinct, and your heart instinct. So in our culture, the gut instinct is extremely muddied because of all the glyphosate that they put in everything. It's in the groundwater, it's in the food, it's the Roundup. So until you heal your actual gut biome system, your gut intuition isn't going to be as on point. Not only that, but you're also going to not be able to reabsorb, produce the amount of serotonin that the gut makes. So you won't be able to feel that like, yeah, that feels good, that feels right, because your gut is actually unhealthy. Not only that, thinking about the chakra system, back to the brainstem, so is this really a gut instinct, or is it a fear gut instinct? Is it a gut reaction, or is it a gut instinct? Right? And is this an instinct based on parasites that are actually in my gut, or is it my higher mind that is in healthy relationship to my gut? So there's that part of intuition. Then there's that third eye intuition, the higher knowing, the higher mind. Looking back again at our cultural system, we are flooded with fluoride and other pineal gland, third eye calcifiers. So being able to really clear out that and clear off that gland, so that not only do you have the ability to see your higher truth, but not only that, but you actually see higher truth outside of yourself. So there's that type of intuition, right? Then there's the heart intuition. That's just like, I have no idea, I just feel it. It's kind of like when you meet someone and you're like, I love you, like, why are we sisters? I don't even know. And it's like, I don't know either. Right? You know that because we had that. Like, oh my God, Becky. And then there's an inexplainable intuition that is in that center of the universe, that is in the heart. And oftentimes those have walls around it because of all this other upper and lower chakra belief systems and traumas that have walled off this space. So to actually listen to that voice of discernment, to know which one to follow, is such a multifaceted experience. Because if you go to places like India, they're very upper chakra based. They're in meditation and prayer and reverence all the time. So it's all up here. So culturally speaking, they're actually in a timeline where even like Sadhguru is like, hey, y'all, bring it down to the earth. Let's love the mother. Let's love the earth again. Like, let's be stewards of the land. And here in this culture, in the Americas, we're very earthy, very grounded. Let's do the resources. Let's take it all. We want more. There's never enough. Lack mentality. I have nothing connected to anything bigger. Right? So how do we know this, which voice is actually in our highest good? I think it takes practice and awareness and like clearing the body. I think that's why being like healthy is really important. Like to drink water and eat your fruits and veggies and do the organic stuff as much as possible, because then we can feel into that intuition, because it's like, I know some people that it's like, okay, well, this voice of discernment. The voice of discernment may not be so much a voice as it is a sensation in a shoulder. I've worked with people in activating their spiritual gifts and just kind of playing with that. And some people will see a certain color for yes and a certain color for no. Some have a sensation in their body. They're like, ooh, this is a yes, this is a no. Like they feel a direction of movement. So I think learning the full self, body, mind, spirit, lets the ego be recognized, lets the higher self be recognized, and allow for the expansion and contraction and discernment to actually be applied. That's the way I see it. It's a lot of words.
Like different person to person.
Which I think is really freeing and liberating, because especially if the you, me, the I, whoever, if we're in a position where it's like, I don't know what voice to listen to, then it's like this kind of like free for all. Like, well then cool. Okay, so today I'm going to try discernment with my body. If anyone asks me anything at all, what do you want for breakfast? You want to go out? I'm going to just pause and just feel in my body. And maybe if my body is pulling forward, it's a yes. Maybe if it pushes back, it's a no. Or if it feels heavy, it's a no. because your body is the messenger for you. And just give yourself a day to be with your body and play with that.
I like that.
And it's more fun, like, to be in that exploration with ourself and the ego.
Mhm.
Instead of like, let me find this book and look up the answer. I have a tendency to do that. Like, I need to get on video, like I need to find the answer somewhere outside of myself, and it sends me on goose chases, totally ungrounding. Then it's an hour later, I still don't have the answer, and I'm like scattered. So yeah, there's freedom in like coming home.
Mm-hmm. What were you gonna say?
No, that just reminded me, like, I used to resist it, right? So it's like I need to remind myself to be more playful, just have fun with myself.
Yeah.
It could be a negative or a positive, but at the end of the day, still be playful and remind myself that I'm growing and expanding.
Yeah. I love that I'm bringing in the Tantra Illuminated book, and like the word that keeps coming up is just play with yourself. Just play with yourself. Just play with yourself. Just see what you're all about. See what you like. See what you don't like.
I love it.
Just play with yourself. See what it's like. Ooh, yes. Ooh, Linda says muscle testing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Muscle.
Sure, why not?
Testing.
Muscle testing. It's just Popeye does it. Linda, what kind of muscle testing do you do? Have you all ever done muscle testing on yourself?
A little tiny bit.
So I'll show you one that's really easy for like self. Do you have you?
Once, maybe twice. I could never really get into it. So
Okay. It's not necessarily the easiest for me, because I go into the land of infinite potentials and I know there is no wrong answer.
Yeah.
And so my body's like, really? What? So the one that I will show is if you take your first and thumb and you put them together like that. And if you press them together and you pull apart, you can't really, and then if you pull enough, then they open up. So what happens is if it's a, okay, I'm going to say this and it could be different for you. If it slides out, like, oh, then that's like, that's a yes. Oh, yeah, I do want to do it. If there's resistance, it's a no. It may be different for you because everybody's body is going to be different.
So should I try to resist that at all though?
A little bit, yeah. So we'll start off with things that you know. Kinesiology. So you know the answer to this. Do I want to have Brussels sprouts for dinner? And just pull. Okay? You want Brussels sprouts for dinner?
No.
Okay? So you got to know. No. I want chocolate cake for dinner.
I don't want that either.
And based on what your heart is telling you, are your fingers telling you the truth? And vice versa. Are you feeling like, yeah, this is real?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So flip the definition of what this is.
Okay.
So if this was a yes and it wasn't really aligning, make this the no.
Cool.
Okay. So I love puppies. I love puppies.
I'd say this is a yes then. I think because I just want to hold on to that truth.
Right. Funny how that works. Okay. I look forward to the rest of my life. This one is only one that you know. In this now moment can always change. I'm beautiful. Interesting, right? Because our body, now this is the point, this is the point
Right.
to kinesiology. Our body holds memories.
Yeah.
Our body has cellular memories. So if my whole life experience in my body has been I hate it, it's ugly, my heart and my higher self knows different, but it may not be fully integrated into my form. So kinesiology for me is it's a great tool to play with, and for me personally, it's not always 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. Another way is if you have another human with you and you hold out your arm, and they'll say, you can say oatmeal, and if they can just push it down easy, then that's either like the yes or the no or whatever.
Yeah.
And otherwise, it's like nope, it's safe. You can have oatmeal, but oh no, don't eat oatmeal.
I've practiced that one with my manager from Yoga Wand. That's the most I've worked with it when someone else does it, and it was, I would say, far more effective or even believable. I don't know if I want to use that word, but more responsive. I trusted the answer more because it wasn't me doing it, and I couldn't taunt myself. And well, did I just let my finger slip because I wanted it to?
Right.
It's like more clear. It was more clear with an arm like this, or yeah, he had us do it like this.
Okay,
On the elbow.
gotcha.
Yeah, and it was cool. It was like a great way to get information, but you don't always have somebody next to you
Right.
that's skilled in that thing.
Or you have someone next to you and they're just like, I'm gonna push it down, and you're like,
He would also always start with like, give me a yes. So you start that way. Yes. No. So you almost like set your body up with the
To
yes
give you the
and no
answers.
before you ask the question.
Yes, thank you for that.
Especially if it changes from time to time.
Yeah.
You can muscle test yourself on what type of muscle testing you want.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's where I would get weird.
I mean, it can get meta.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? It's like, oh, okay, so today's yes is not the same as yesterday's yes. Thanks, yes. So fun. I want to share this, talking about the ego and the expansion of it. Since the ego simply means like what you think you are, right? What you think you are, you are. Expanding it means expanding your sense of self, including more and more reality in your self-definition. Ultimately, when the ego expands infinitely, you experience all things in yourself and yourself in all things. So that means when you start to really expand that ego, that I see that I am you and you are me, because we are that one. And we also see the same thing in the plant and in the puppy across the street. You know? There are no more boundaries to selfhood. You have acquired an all-encompassing I. When you experience all beings as part of yourself, you naturally act with compassion and wisdom. This is the state of Purnoam Vimarsa, which can be translated several ways. So basically, it's the perfect I consciousness, or the awareness I am full and complete and whole, or the awareness of the real I encompasses everything. It's the state of complete all-inclusive expansion. Just as the mass of any object accelerated to the speed of light increases to infinity, in the same way, when the ego reaches the state of complete expansion, it merges into the ocean of consciousness. Obviously, there's a pitfall in this particular strategy. You expand your ego to become very large, but not infinite. You may find that becomes a problem if you get stuck there. And bringing it to that other end of the spectrum, where the overinflated, not the overinflated, but the overexpanded ego, where you lose the sense of you. Then you're no longer, in this case, practicing Tantra. You are just the consciousness. Then I think more of like Buddha, being I just am Zen. I just am. I'm like in samadhi. I'm in this bliss space all the time. And it's not a bad thing, And at the same time, you no longer have the human experience to the fullest. And I personally feel that's what we're here to do. Because every time I have a human experience, then I can grow and expand. My ego contracts me, I grow and expand it. My ego contracts me, I love it, and I heal it, and I grow and expand it. And every time I expand, I get bigger and bigger. But to completely annihilate the egoic aspect, you really lose your individualism. You lose that sense of self. You lose the purpose of being in the human form. You're just a floating nebulous, which is really great on occasion, which I think is why many of us have experienced a lot of relationships with sex and alcohol and drugs and distraction. Because it was like our mind needed to be there because our ego was constricting the mind too much. So our body just wanted to use these substances to just let go. To lose myself just for the day. So what do y'all feel around that? Like, oh shit. Yeah, I guess the ego really can only expand so much. Or do you want to get to that point?
Of samadhi?
Mhm.
I guess that is a choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I mean, because there's that aspect of like experiencing it instead of always being in that state of bliss. So it depends on how you look at life. Do you want to have more experiences, or do you want to just continuously stay in that blissful non-attachment feeling?
Mm.
I feel attached.
You feel what?
Attached.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Healthily attached or unhealthily attached for you?
Both. But even if I like healed all the things I currently want to heal and sort of became the version of myself my higher self sees for myself, I still would, or I think in this moment, I feel like I would still be attached to my individuality, even from a higher self place, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel right now.
I want to have this conversation on another expansions where we talk about attachment and non-attachment, because there are so many conversations I think that can be had with being unattached to attachment, but also being attached to unattachment.
Mm-hmm.
Because it kind of
Right?
Yeah.
Because what is it? So I would love to have that on a
Yeah.
conversation, bringing that into the awareness, calling that one in. But yeah, I think, we lose that magic, right? That says if the ego isn't there to contract us, then to me, that can actually lead to, although it feels complete, expanded, nebulous, like, it also feels stagnant to me. Right? There's no inspiration for movement forward. For let's create something new. Okay, what's the next step? How can I be of service, right? How can I support life on earth? Because it's just like, well, I am life on earth.
Right.
Yeah.
that's true.
And I think though,
I feel that all the time though at times too, and that's the thing. It's like, do I really want to stay in that like feeling, or do I want to do more? And that's, I mean, I feel like I'm in that right now. It's I am showing up, but then there's another way to show up too. So that I could keep growing and expanding. Yeah. So that's that choice of like, do you want to stay there, or do you want to just, go the other way?
yeah, I see it. I see the relationship with the ego like a dance. I see it like the way the planets move in the cosmos, right? None really go in retrograde. It's just our perspective that makes the planets look like they're going backward in space and time. So it looks like that all the planets are doing this like waltz in the sky, right? Just moving this way. Oh, let me go Mercury. Let me just mess up all communication. Venus is like, let's love everything, and whatever. And so really being able to be in that relationship dance with that aspect of ourself, the ego, instead of like, no, go away, you go sit in the corner, I want to go dance here by myself. It's not as much fun. It's like who's ever been in the club and you want to dance and ain't nobody out there and you don't want to be out there by yourself. It's more fun when you have others. And to me, egos are just different aspects of our personality. So really it's like, how can I dance in that feeling of I love you and I'm going to spin you until you just spin off, and then you can come back and you might be dizzy, but you're going to shut up this time. You know, or I'm going to just hold you so tight. We're just going to make this a slow dance because you haven't been held in a long time. You know, and loving through it that way. And then when the music pauses in this analogy of life, then we can sit and just be in that spaciousness of the ever expanded ego, the presence of the I am only. You know, I would love to hear your thoughts.
I'm absorbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm loving this conversation.
Yeah.
It's given me so much to like think about and to like mull over. Yes, Linda's like cosmic dance. Esteban, learn to grow. Yes. Also, Linda said, who wouldn't want chocolate cake for dinner? Really, like, duh, I know. But I'm really enjoying this conversation, and it's given me more awareness and realization, because I feel that right now, especially with the climate of the earth and the climate of the collective and all the things that are happening around the world, that reality itself is feeling like a contraction. You know, there are things that are happening to our brothers and sisters in different countries that are very contracting feeling. It doesn't make me feel light and like, yay, people in Australia are not able to leave their house now. You know, like, oh, look at Afghanistan, yay. Like, it doesn't feel light and bubbly to me. It feels like a contraction. So then it's like the discernment. Like, how do I apply this to even like real life? But I feel like that what's happening on this global scale is that we are all in a position to shift into our future versions of us. That we are actually in this now moment, integrating so much of our higher self into this embodiment so that we can create the new earth systems, create new communities, new support networks, new ways of being for ourselves and others, not just locally, but beyond. So then it's like, now that I'm like, okay, so I can see how this awareness of my ego and the dance can be applied to like my relationship at home, especially, and how I can be like more kind and nurturing, because if you're in any relationship with anyone close to you, whether it's your dog or a parent or a friend or a lover, they're going to be reflecting parts of your ego that are real contracting, and it's great. So how to be more loving and compassionate to that experience, but then also allowing myself to be in this free, fluid, dancing space, because I think that's what's going to really get us through these days of things that we're witnessing that really sucks, you know? So I'm curious, while we start to wrap this up, what, I don't want to say takeaway because that sounds real lame, but like, what is the nugget that you have received or that you have gotten that you would like to share? Nuggets, please.
I'm into the cosmic dancing. That was a good visual and something I can definitely use. Like dancing with my ego. I think that's lovely. And play with myself. That's what I'm taking home.
Right? Yeah, you are. Playing with yourself and dancing. Like that's like Tantra right there.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
done.
Yeah.
Really? You know?
Yeah.
Ooh, I love that. I'm letting that one just like anchor into my cells, so that's what I call in for myself. So thank you for that one.
Thank you. Lightness.
Yeah.
Helps.
I think for me, it's also playing with the metaphor, you know, personally and with others.
Ooh. To that. Playing with yourself and with others. How can you play with someone else's ego?
So, asking open-ended questions from a heart-centered space rather than from an ego-centered space.
Ooh, yes. Let the heart do the talking.
Right.
So pretending like it's your ego. So I guess that would be the ego expanded enough to see yourself in all things.
And be able to
Recognizing
catch
that-
yourself before you respond from the ego, you respond from the opposite of the ego.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's that discernment real quick.
Right.
Yeah.
Like getting that like oof. And then and then
Yeah.
when you catch yourself speaking not from the heart but from that hurt ego place, matching someone else's ego, like what? And then you realize that you're being a bully.
Right.
And then how do we really step up and be like, you know what? No, I just totally spoke out of my ass right now. My bad. I love you. Can we just start this conversation over?
Right.
That's not the easy. That to me is like one of the hardest
Yeah.
things. It's like shoving the humble pie in my mouth, like after the foot has been in there.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't taste as good. It's like funky. I love that, Zachary. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Recognizing that in others and without judgment, right? Without being like, oh, your ego's doing the talking, you know, like, because that just sucks, you know.
And that's your ego talking back.
Yeah, it really is. Like, instead of like, oh my God, I love your ego. It's so cute. That's my ego too, because I feel it.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
like, how cute is that?
Mhm.
Yeah, that feels so much better than like, your ego is so blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
Wow. So it's talking to other people's egos the way you would talk to your own. Like if you're supposed to be loving and accepting of your ego and giving it what it needs rather than what it wants, then you're doing the same with other people. So it goes back to the dance. Cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And being really aware and
And
using
then
discernment on how am I talking to my ego goes back to the top of the hour.
Right.
You know? What about you?
I agree with everything.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what else to add.
Your nugget. I want to see what the Bonnie Lee says, the Holly says. I learned that too, Jane. Definitely like a dance, depending on the energy of the universe, solar system, and clashing energies or matching energies. Tango, ballet, or synchronicity like water dancers. Ooh, that was beautifully spoken, written. I spoke it. That sounded a little bit ego. That was so beautifully spoken. That was beautifully written. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's really it's dancing with all of these energies, you know, and doing the best we can and not beating ourselves up. You know, it's like, you know, the other day my ego got loud. And I was like, yeah, girl, you're right. And then I was like, wait. And I just had to be in that stillness, like you were talking about, just be in that little time space where like my higher self wasn't able to be loud enough, but I needed to like just like witness the ego. And I was like, I need to just go take a walk around the block. So then it was like I just took care of the neutral person, walked, did my little walk, came back, and then was able to be fully present for the situation, you know? So before we end, I want to read what this card is. And then I'll pass it to y'all. It's the Kanini card. It says, in each other we find ourselves, which is also like on the cover. Peep that.
So pretty.
So
And this, okay, yeah.
what were you going to say?
Nothing. What you just said.
That it's
It
on
took
the
a
cover.
second to register, yeah.
It happens. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll just read like the italicized kind of like overarching thing. It says, in each other we find ourselves. Can't make this
Oh, so
up.
that's how you do it, right?
Uh-huh.
Pull the card and then sum it up?
Yeah, right?
Right.
Yeah, because like
Yeah.
I don't know what the card means.
Right.
I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, oh, pretty picture. Isn't
Yeah, I was gonna say that too, like
it lovely?
the details and everything.
Show the
It
show the
says-
computer people.
Yes. Check this out, y'all. This was the card that was pulled at the top of the hour, not knowing anything about how this conversation was going to go. But it says, there's a spiritual purpose that only you can fulfill. As you move forward on your journey, you create space for others to move along behind you. And as the ones ahead of you move forward, so too does room open up for your expansion. Upon this earth, we are all building the sacred temple, each fulfilling our tasks as we assist and support each other in our collective divine mission. How can you help with your heart? How can you help with your heart most actively engaged? What can you offer which inspires and energizes you so much that others are uplifted in your presence? How can you receive from others joyfully, bringing them pleasure? Engage in giving and receiving deeply and with devotion. Your wisdom and your openness to life generates healing for our earth.
I'm here for it.
I felt that.
Right? So on that note, my friends, does anyone have anything else that they would like to share before we close? All right. So let's just take a moment in gratitude for Great Spirit, the oneness, the source of all that is, whether it's the universe, the God, the goddess, the earth herself. Just having that moment of gratitude. And then just a moment of gratitude for all of the guiding spirits, the ancestors, the two-legged, the four-legged, and the flying ones. And so much gratitude for the I am that is you, that resides within you, that is ready to be embodied fully, to be seen and heard, and to create upon this earth plane. With so much gratitude, we take a breath in and let it go. I'm so grateful to be on this earth plane with y'all, with everybody here. Like, so grateful. I've enjoyed this. I'm gonna do this real quick and then everything. Thank you all so much for being here and chiming in and all of that. Please, if you're in Charlotte, come be in person with me on Tuesdays at 6. And otherwise, share the love and love your ego. Okay, love you all. Bye.